and they might get trapped into doing the latest asymmetrical layout out there just to fall in line with the trends, when I actually want to see how they think and how they solve problems and how they're creative within constraints. This is the main key, what I want to see. I want to see how you're creative within constraints.
This is the Industry of UX, Season 2, Inside the UX Hiring Journey. We talk to the experts to bring you the strategies, the thinking process, and the reasoning behind the hiring decisions in the UX job market. Let's dive into the episode. Hello, you wonderful UXers. Welcome back to another episode of the Industry of UX. I'm your host, Filippo Lovotti. I hope you're having a great day, and I'm glad to be here with you today. So, one of the hot topics when it comes to UX hiring is the design challenge. This is what I refer to as the at-home challenge because it's given to the candidates to complete at a later date, unlike a whiteboard challenge where it's happening right during the interview. And there are some great resources about design challenges out there, but we wanted to get the perspective of a seasoned hiring manager. So we brought Mirela Ignat on the show. Mirela is a UX lead at Provably Fair, a design mentor at both Springboard and ADP List, and a design leader forum member at Envision. If you want to learn how to ace a design challenge, keep listening. Mirela covers her expectations as a hiring manager, how to successfully complete the challenge, and how to avoid spec work. Let me know what you think about the episode by tweeting at IndustryUX. No offense to Android users, but if you have an iPhone, give us a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps us produce a better show and bring the podcast to a bigger audience. Okay, on to the conversation with Mirela. As a hiring manager, why would you give an at-home challenge to a candidate? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to test as a hiring manager? What are you trying to see?
So I really want to see how people think, how they spot improvement areas. Why do they consider those areas worthy of improvements? Just because all of the work that we do as designers, at least 95% of it is under NDA. And the work that we put in our portfolio is carefully crafted over months and constantly improved. And I really want to see how designers deal in a real life situation with boundaries set in place, with things missing. I really want to see how they do in a real life scenario. So this is why we kind of give design challenges for them at home. And I really want to see basically how they take advantage of storytelling when they present their work. I want to see why do they take those decisions? Why do they suggest those improvements? And what I really appreciate in whenever someone's presenting their work afterwards, I really want to see people who take advantage of storytelling and they use words people can understand, and they don't get trapped in that UX vocabulary in order to just sound smart and more professional. Because when you have to present a concept to a low UX maturity client, you will have to adapt your language so that person will understand. Because if you get into too many semantics and UX terminology, you might not get the client. So I'm really testing for that as well. And something that I've been doing lately in the past few years is that with few candidates, I kind of ask them to estimate their work. So we give them a challenge. For example, it can be, okay, do a heuristic analysis to this website. Let's see a redesign if it's a UI position. And I really want to see how people estimate their work, as in I don't give them a deadline. I don't tell them, bring it back to me in 10 days. I send them the work and I ask them, okay, I want you to look at it and estimate based on your free time and your current workload, how much would it take for you? And they can say 10 days, or they can say 10 days because this and this and this, and I will be sick and I might have surgery, because you don't know what people have at home. They might be caring for a loved one, or they might be having two jobs at the moment.
Right.
So I want to kind of relieve some of that pressure from the hiring process because it's stressful by default, and there's no sense in making it more stressful for the candidate.
So when you're doing this type of exercise, what is more important to you, speed or accuracy of estimate?
None. I don't want I don't want them to kind of cram 10 days of work into two. That's inhumane.
Right.
And accuracy, I'm trying to get them as accurate as possible, but I'm not expecting perfection
Right.
because that would be foolish of me to kind of expect perfection. And even if they send something which might not be, let's say, ideal, if the candidate has the emotional maturity in order to accept feedback, I always send them feedback. Hey, these are your strong points. These are areas that I consider you should improve or would benefit you for the future. Some of them appreciate it, right? And some of them take it personally. But I do it from a place where I'm kind of wanting to help
Right.
because always a fresh pair of eyes to something is really good. And it's not a sign of weakness, like some people might consider, as in asking for help or getting feedback. No, it's just someone else placing you in a mirror.
I mean, to me, it's the opposite of a sign of weakness. If anything, is a sign of
Yeah.
strength. If you have to point to either one or the other, because if you think about it in a way, like you are actually opening up, you're becoming vulnerable, right? And you're basically saying, "Hey, you can criticize my work. You can give me criticize my. I have no control about what you're going to say about my work, but I know that I can take it because it's my work that you're criticizing. First off, it's my work that you're criticizing, not myself as a person. So that's where I
Yes.
feel a lot of the issues come about because you give feedback to someone and they take it, oh, I am incapable or my UX skills are not that good, so I am deficient as a person in this area. No, 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 no. It's the work that gets
Yes.
critiqued. It's
Exactly.
the work that gets the feedback. And that's one thing. The other thing is there are a lot of folks that are not used to receiving feedback
Yeah.
on their work because maybe they work in isolation. I was talking to one of my colleagues at Zappos about this the other day. He comes, like myself, from visual design, from graphic design. And in that field, you don't necessarily look for feedback. You have your clients give you all the feedback that you need, but you're not necessarily surrounded by others that care for you enough that want to give you feedback. At least in the scenarios where myself and my colleague were brought up into design. And so when you join UX and when you get to know about UX designers, that is it's a field where it's the exact opposite. You actually want the feedback. You actually constantly seek that feedback to understand what can you do better, how can your design be better, right? Then it really opens you up, and at first you feel a little vulnerable, but that's just the way it is. You're going to become a much stronger designer, and also I will argue a stronger person when you can decouple the feedback and the critique that is given to something that you have done versus the one that is
Yeah.
directed at you almost as a ad hominem. So it's really important, and it definitely makes you a better designer. So yeah, that's why I think that being able to receive feedback and being able to make decisions based on that feedback is not a sign of weakness. If anything, is a sign of I can this is I
Yeah,
know
I
that
can agree.
if you have to take one or the other, it's probably a sign of strength. You're like, I can take it. Yeah, my work can take it. And I can do better work.
Yeah, totally. I mean, when we work with projects, they have constraints, technical or client constraints or budget. So a mistake that designers do in their belief is that they kind of confuse their worthiness with their work. They're not the same thing. We do what's within the project, but that doesn't mean we can't do better, right? We can all do all the eye candy dribble shots or Behance shots, but maybe we work on a project, but that's not the case. That doesn't mean you're not good enough. And we're kind of trapped in this situation where we compare our work with Dribble and Behance just because it's eye candy and it looks good, and we don't compare it with impact. We don't compare it as in nobody kind of asks themselves when they look at Dribble, okay, this is a nice shot. What's the context? How do I get here? How do I get back out of here? And
Absolutely.
for me, it's painful to see designers go into that rumble with themselves, with imposter syndrome, where they compare with something that it's not realistic. yeah, this is the feel.
Yeah, we have no idea what the context was. We have no idea who the users of that particular design are. And as a more senior, I mean, I've been in the field for quite a few years now, but sometimes when you go to Dribble, you see some great interfaces, but you can actually start pointing out
Yeah.
accessibility and usability issues of designs that look to the eye very, very appealing.
Yes.
And I do have, I had mentees in the past that went on Dribble, and you know, they came back to me saying, "Oh, I feel bad because I'm not at this level. You know, these people are great," and I had to tell them exactly what you just mentioned. You know, this is designing in a vacuum, which does not mimic the real world. You and I, we can, or anyone, you know, you can do your design project. It's not accountable to anyone. It can look great, and then you post it on Dribble, but you have not solved the problem other than yours, as in, I want to design. That's my problem. I have a solution. I'll design something and post it on Dribble. That's the problem that you solve with your design. It's like social media in a way, like the larger conversation about social media. Like if I only post photos of things that go well, you think that my life is perfect, but there's so much stuff that people don't post in social media about, like failures and rainy days and all of that stuff. And so it's really, really similar.
What I used to tell my mentees always is that when they get into this imposter syndrome, that their design is not beautiful or is not eye candy enough, is I always ask themselves, did you help someone with your work? Or will your work help someone at the end of the day? Will they make their workflow easier or faster? Would they be less frustrated? If the answer is yes, then yes, you're a good designer. You did the best you could in the given situation. So I kind of want them to realize that how things look doesn't necessarily mean that you're helping less people, right?
Exactly.
So you might be working with a design system which might not look very new and cool and shiny, but it helps people in the end. And that's the restriction from the business working with their design system.
So speaking of, we talked a little bit about standing out, how
Mhm.
Dribble, some of those designs stand out, and kind of latching onto that concept of standing out and bringing it back to the hiring process. I wanted to ask you, in your role as hiring manager, to your eyes, what makes at home challenges stand out?
So what I really want to say is simplicity and not overcomplication, especially in junior designers when they apply for a position. I say that they're trying to be special in every way. So they might end up having a yellow background with a brown font on top just because they want to be different. And they might get trapped into doing the latest asymmetrical layout out there just to fall in line with the trends when I actually want to see how they think and how they solve problems and how they're creative within constraints. This is the main key, what I want to see. I want to see how you're creative within constraints, not with the ideal situation. So just keep it simple. Show me the context in which you took those decisions, why you took those decisions, what was the reasoning. Show me a picture, maybe a before and after. If it's a UI, you really want to see the impact of a redesign if you have to do it, or you really want to see if it's an usability issue, describe why is it an usability issue and a proposed solution. So you don't have to overcomplicate it. Some of them go a bit more in detail, as in they make custom fonts, they make custom icons.
Wow.
Yes, people kind of put their efforts in the wrong direction just
Yeah.
because this is the mentality given by Dribble and Behance. I'm not saying they're not good platforms for people to learn and to give her inspiration. I use that as well. I'm just saying that it kind of sets false expectations because there's so much information out there about what you're supposed to do as a designer, how a day in your life looks like, so that people kind of fall in line with what's most visible out there. Because let's be honest, most of our daily challenges like documentation, meetings, convincing a client, presenting a concept, doing the 17th iteration, those are not
Hmm.
out there. We don't talk about them. We just talk about the nice and shiny things that happen in the design world.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head. Dribble is a good website to use as a source of inspiration, but not everything that shines is made of gold, if you know what I mean. So Dribble definitely has its limitations. Going back to the core of the design challenge, if you had a list called do these things in your design challenge and it'll make your hiring manager happy, what would that look like?
Okay, so let's take for example that I give you a website and I want you to do redesign for it, and I also want you to do a heuristic analysis, see what's wrong there with usability. So first of all, I would want you to briefly describe for me a bit of desk research, something that you did, you browsed, what's your initial feeling, right? Maybe a bit of description about that website. If you chose it yourself, sometimes I let candidates choose it themselves. So I don't necessarily give them something, right? I want to, if you, let's start with usability. If you're doing a heuristic analysis, I want to see the metrics of which of your analysis. First of all, where you're aiming for. I want to see a scale of those metrics in terms of impact. Is this critical? Users can still live with this, right? So not necessarily it needs an immediate attention from a designer. I want to see proposed solutions where those are clear, right? It's fine if you don't necessarily, if it's a specialized industry, you might not know how to deal with that. And it's okay to be curious and ask and say, hey, I didn't know that. I really appreciate when people admit it, that I don't know that, but I'm willing to learn. That values a lot for me. And if you're doing a UI challenge, let's say you're doing a redesign, I really want to see a breakdown of your initial issues that you spotted, right? So it might be the drop shadows, it might be the components, it might be the fonts, which might not be readable at all. It might be the color scheme, right? And I want to see a side to side comparison, either at component level or at page level. And I want to see some text about why you made that challenge. So, like, I decided to change the color scheme from green and yellow to black and white just because it improves readability. It's a more minimalistic approach, and so on. It can be simple words. You don't have to tell me a lot of complicated words from all the UX dictionaries, but make me understand. Maybe you have to present to a stakeholder who is a mid UX maturity. He might understand some words, but he might understand them all. So I want people to be able to explain things plainly because they will have to do that on a daily basis to a developer, to a tester, to a project manager, to a VP. You never know.
So I wanted to ask you something else that you mentioned in passing when you talked about the type of challenge that you will give to a candidate. You were saying if I have them do a critique of a particular website or app. So question for you, because this comes up a lot, and you probably have seen this a lot with your mentees as well. But there are companies out there such as Amazon or Facebook that they were during the interview process, the hiring process, they will stay away from asking you to do critique or presentations or anything that has anything to do with their properties. So Amazon with Amazon.com or AWS or anything like that, and Facebook with Instagram and Facebook. But then there are other companies that would ask you to maybe work on one of their apps or websites. Normally, these are smaller companies, and they will give you a page or a flow or a red route or what have you, and ask you, hey, how would you make this better? And before I could go on, but I don't want to bias you too much because I feel that you want to say something. I can tell that you're about to explode, so I'll let you do that, but I'll let you elaborate on it. But yeah, my question is, what do you think about these two approaches?
So let me start with the last one. So having people do a challenge, right, at home challenge on your website or on your company, that sounds ethically wrong for me because you can definitely take that work and recycle it into your company. So as a designer, I would ask some questions before starting and doing this sort of assignment. And when I give people these home assignments, they're never about the company that I work, the product or anything else. It's just a website that I've been on and I got lost, I got frustrated, and I know three other people got frustrated. Okay, here it is. It has nothing to do with the industry and so on. So yeah, it's hard for me to kind of relate to this, and I don't think I would do that in the future. And regarding Amazon and Google, this is the first time I hear about it. I think it's interesting. I'm not sure why they do it. Maybe they think the interview would be very overwhelmed because that we're very influenced about brands, and the bigger they are, the more important that we think they are, the more important they work we think they are. So I'm not sure. Maybe they consider it hard for designers to do it right then and there. They can't give them context as well because you're a designer. I'm giving you a task. By default, the next question is going to be why? Why is this here? How is this that? I'm not sure they can answer those questions in an interview without you signing something. So
Right. So, question for you: if you were applying for a job and they asked you to do that, they asked you, "Hey, Mirela, can you go on our website and pick the subscribe red route and do a critique of that and tell us what you would change?" How would you respond to that request?
well, the first question would be why? Would that be on your website? Would you use my work afterwards? I mean, that's the first thought that goes through your head as a designer, right? Because we all know that someone who might have done this or didn't get paid, or I myself have done interview work that took me 2 weeks or 1 week, which is a lot. So I would ask why if I would have a discussion with the person and they would clearly explain to me, hey, we really want to see how you perform on this. We're not going to use your work and so on. If I feel that the person is trustworthy and they're serious about that and they take my work seriously, sure, I would do that. I wouldn't necessarily go very much in detail like I would do on a project because, of course, we have a time constraint and limitation. And I would make it very clear that the work is not to be used afterwards. But besides than that, I don't have any control. So it's just I'm taking up their word.
So one other thing that you mentioned in the past is that you value a candidate's passion and energy towards design
Yeah.
really, really highly. So you prefer that a candidate is excited about UX and passionate about UX design. So of course that these are all important things. You wouldn't want someone that comes in and tells you, yeah, well, whatever. Yeah, I guess I like design. I mean, that would be a red flag right off the bat. It will be really easy to say
Yeah.
to reject that candidate. But can you elaborate a little bit more about why do you feel that's so important to you? Like, and how have designers expressed that passion in the past that made you say, I would like to see this in other designers in the future?
Mhm. So up until this point in my career, I got to work with various people, various designers. So I kind of noticed a pattern in all of these people who are passionate and dedicated to their work. So if you're passionate enough about your work, you might be inclined to go that extra mile in convincing the client about the concept, in having a discussion with developers and explaining the value of design to them, right? And if people don't value you as a designer, right, on a project, if you're one of those people who kind of do the job just for the sake of doing the job, you might be fine with that, as in being treated as an accessory. But if you really like design and you really care about the design team in your company, you might want to take it upon yourself to educate those people, right? Try and increase their maturity level about UX. So this is what I see as a consequence of being passionate, right? And being in love with design. I'm not saying that we're in love with design on a day-to-day basis. We might have a day when we're mad about it, or we might not satisfied, or we're not at our best. But I say that people who are highly motivated and passionate go that extra mile. They have the tendency just because they care. It comes from a place of caring about your impact. So, for example, I like to educate other testers, developers, product managers. And even if I don't manage to educate them fully, right, they might have some reluctancy about UX. It's still going to be easier for the designer that comes afterwards, right? They won't have to start from zero. They might have to start from 50%, 40%. So this is what I'm striving for, right? I don't want for developers, testers, and product managers to feel like, oh, the designer is here to come and do pretty pictures and crop images. No, I'm here to help, and I really want people to understand when they should request this help, when are those situations when I can help them. Because if you're in development, it's really tempting to kind of provide a solution off the bat, right? If you're a designer, the magic word is, I'm gonna get back to you on that later, right? Because you really want to analyze the context and all the edge cases and the situations, and make sure that you're not breaking other three flows, right? So this is one I'm really excited when someone comes to me, hey, I have this usability issue. Yes, that means that they understood when I can help them and what's the value of my help. This is what I'm striving, and comes from this energy and passion I have for design. And I see these in other people. And it multiplies, and sometimes it's contagious, and I'm happy if it's contagious, because designers talk amongst themselves, developers talk amongst themselves, and it's word of mouth. As in, if one developer feels trustworthy to come to you, then if they notice another developer struggling, they might say, hey, could you do designer? He helped me. He will help you as well. So this is why I know this, as a consequence of being passionate.
Speaking of developers, this is something that I've seen floating around for ages, but do you think designers should code?
So I used to write HTML and CSS. It wasn't necessarily my choice. The job kind of required it. So my plain answer would be no, they shouldn't. If they wish to do so, that's great, right? We're not stopping anyone to do something they love, but no one should be pushed into this. Because for me personally, I really want to focus on UX.
Yes.
And I feel that writing code kind of detours me from that. And I really want to have someone who's specialized. I can't be a specialist in 4 fields.
Exactly.
So I really want to have someone who's specialized on front end, who can do that better than me and faster than me, of course. So short answer, no. If you really want to do so, sure. But I'm never going to ask a designer to write code as mandatory. It should be a choice. You shouldn't be pushed into it.
So Mirela, we are getting close to the end of our episode today. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciated our chat.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. Before we leave, I wanted to ask you one more thing, which is actually 2.
Okay.
Number 1, are you open to, if someone listens to this episode and they are really interested in talking to you, are you open to having a conversation or even mentoring them? And number 2, where and how can people find you online?
Sure. So you can find me on LinkedIn. That's where I'm active professionally. And you can find me on ADP List. If you haven't heard about ADP List, it's a platform where a lot of designers from around the world mentor for free. And I'm on there. So schedule time with me or give me a message on LinkedIn. And you can find me at Springboard. So I mentor for Springboard. And if you're joining their classes, I might be a mentor during the program.
I like that with one answer, you answer 2 questions. By the way, at ADP List, you can also charge. I know that some designers actually charge.
Really?
On ADP List. Mm-hmm.
That's wrong.
Mm-hmm. You go on there. So I'm assuming that you had to set up your Calendly on ADP List for people to be. Some people charge through their Calendly. So when you go there, maybe they have the 15-minute options free, but the 30-minute and the 1-hour option, I think the 1-hour option is like $150. So
no, I will never charge an ADP List. I mean, I started this just because I wanted to help out and give back to the community. Because when I started out, there were no mentors available, not to this scale. And not everyone can afford a program like Springboard. And I really want to make.
I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you're interested in any of the resources we mentioned,